As much as it pains me to do this, I'm going to make a video on how to use your calculator to add and subtract rational numbers. And I don't know where that picture came from. That's very bizarre. So let's try this again. All right. So you should know, in order to add and subtract rational numbers, you should know how to add and subtract integers. And I just did a couple here real quick. If I have a -3 and a -2, well, you should realize that I have 3 negatives and 2 negatives, which means I should have more negatives, and in fact, you end up with 5 negatives. Here I have a +5, and I'm trying to take away 4 negatives. Well, I can't take away 4 negatives from a +5. So instead of taking away 4 negatives from that +5, I'm going to add 4 positives, which gives me a +9. Here I have a -6, and I want to take away 2 positives. So once again, I can't take away 2 positives from a -6. But what I can do is I can add 2 negatives. So I have a -6, and I'm going to add 2 negatives. I'm going to get 8 negatives. So now you might say, well, what if I had 3 2/3, and I want to take away 4 1/4? Well, easiest thing to do is just say, well, how many thirds do I actually have? If I have 3 2/3, I really have 3 times 3 is 9, plus 2 is 11. So I really have 11 thirds. And the reason why in 3 2/3, I'll explain this why. 1 whole is really 3/3. So that's 3/3. But right now I have 3 wholes. And in addition, I also have 2 more thirds. So what I do is I take my whole number and I multiply with my denominator, which gives me 9, and then I add how many extra I had, which is giving me the 11, minus 4 1/4. So 4 times 4 is 16, plus 1 is 17. So I really have 17 quarters. Well, I still can't subtract that because I'm subtracting thirds from fourths, or fourths from thirds. So I'd have to get a common denominator, and what that really means is here I have thirds, and here I have quarters, so I can't really do anything with that. So what I have to do is I have to make the divisions the same. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make them into 12ths. I'm going to multiply this by 4 over 4, which is the same as 1, and this over 3 over 3. And I know what you're thinking. I thought this guy said we were going to be working with calculators, and we're not really working with calculators yet, but we will. That's going to be 51/12. And so what I end up with is 44 minus 51 is a -7/12. Now, 3 2/3 minus 4 1/4. I have to remember that. 3 2/3 minus 4 1/4. So if you have a calculator, what you can do is this. You can say, I have 3 2/3. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say flip 3 plus 2/3 minus 4. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to have to put this in parentheses. 4 1/4. And what I'm doing is I'm using the 4 plus 1/4 in parentheses, and I get -5.833. And you might say, well, the problem is I want my answer to be as a fraction, and it should be -7/12. So if you go to math and you go to fraction, you just have to press enter, and you get -7/12. Now, if your answer doesn't look like that, there is a possibility that you are in classic mode. And if you're in classic mode, it will look something like this. Let's say -7/12 look like this. And so if I go math, enter, it gets that. But if you like it back in the fraction form, all you have to do is go back to mode, find math print, and select math print. And that's it. So say I had 3 2/4 or 2/5. You can always do this as well. I don't normally work with fractions, so I'm a little sure how to do it. So what I'll do is I'd say, once again, 3 2/5 let's make this into a, if you want to do a negative 3 2/5, you do a negative and then parentheses 3 plus 2/5. Let's say we said minus 4 1/4. 4 1/4. And you get that. And I want that as a fraction. So I do this. And there you go, negative 153/20. So like I said, there are ways to do it to get around using longhand. I actually like longhand, but if you are unsure, you can always do this cheating method using your calculator. And like I said, the math print is much better than the classic print. All right.